check. It is recording now. Yeah, okay, good. Sorry, dude. We just start over. Thank you for being on my podcast, dude. Really, really appreciate it. Can you just let me know a bit about how you got into making metal music videos in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been kind of in this music scene for, I don't know, since I was a teenager. My brothers were in a metalcore band. It was kind of my brother's interest in heavier music that like pulled me in. And then both of my brothers were in the same band, and we had like a family camcorder, and I would go to their shows and like document them and whatever. And that kind of both helped me fall in love with the music, but also with like the art of filmmaking and stuff. I was always doing like artistic things as a kid, but that was like the thing that really stuck. And I think as I became more in love with the music and stuff, it just seemed like a great fit as I started doing it for an actual living.
That's sick. How did you progress from, having that interest and then having it be like doing it for a living? Did you take it in school or was it just learning by yourself?
Yeah, so when I was young, like I did it all the time. So I was always creating stuff um, in, I don't know, late elementary school, early high school. And then I had a teacher that was like, you could actually do this for a living, and like kind of pushed me towards that. He was very invested in me, I guess, and told me about school in Vancouver. So I flew out there right after high school and lived in Vancouver to pursue filmmaking, and was in school for about a year and a half, an intensive program. And then, yeah, I started my own business a little bit once I moved back to Saskatchewan. And I feel like the learning really started once I finished film school. It's like film
Okay.
school taught me how little I did know.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then it was like, okay, now
Yeah.
now you start making things and start finding who you are as a filmmaker. My company wasn't specifically for music videos. It was like corporate commercial music videos if I could. And it all kind of changed once I like put myself out there. And I reached out to Spiritbox because it was like when they were just starting. I had connections with them when I used to go and film local shows, and their old bands would like tour to Saskatoon, and my brother's band would play with them, and they would like sleep at our house and stuff. And sometimes they'd pass me their camera to document their band. And that's kind of how I had an in with them. And when they started Spiritbox, they were doing everything DIY, and I was like, let me shoot a video for you for free. Like I don't know, I saw like how it could mutually benefit us, and we had that relationship, and they were like sold on it. So
That was so interesting because it's like the same story for each person I've talked to that like
yeah,
started out as a musician, had some friends that needed something recorded. You're like doing it for them just for the fun of it, and then got some kind of opportunity that they usually did for free. And then I kind of,
yeah.
invested a lot in that project to like see how far you could get with it. And it just took off. I've spoken to a lot of people that had the same experience. That's so cool to hear. Is Spiritbox like a part of your local scene there?
No, I flew out to them. Like
Okay.
they live in a different, well, they now live in the US, but
Yeah.
they originally are from Victoria. So I had to fly to them to do a few videos and stuff.
Was that before or
Um,
after you started Versa Films?
it was after I started Versa Films. I think I was like year 2 or 3 with my company,
Yeah.
and I was doing a lot of corporate stuff, and I was like, oh, this is fun, but this isn't like what my heart desires. And I was like, I
Yeah.
want to do music videos. I want to do stuff that's more creatively engaging, I guess. And I started dipping my toes, and then that was like, oh man, I remember working with their old bands. Courtney had just left I Wrestled a Bear once. So I knew that she like skyrocketed her
Yeah.
career. I actually did a music video with her old band before I Wrestled the Bear once. That's really
Okay.
terrible.
What band was that? Because I knew wasn't Mike and Courtney in Iris the Bear once?
Yes, they were in that band together. But yeah, Courtney was in a band called Unicron, and I did when I was in school in Vancouver, I was right by them, so I ended up doing a music video for that band Unicron, and it was like right before she got asked to join I Wrestled a Bear once,
Ah,
and then
okay,
I
I see.
hadn't spoken to him in a long time. I was like, oh, she's big time now.
Yeah.
And when they left and they were kind of starting anew, it felt like, oh, well, I kind of have an in there. Like maybe maybe we could work something out. And my career was starting to make like better and better work. And luckily they took me on, and it started like a really great collaboration. That video was Perennial. We like shot it in their parents' backyard, and like all this like land that they had access to because of family. And it was super DIY, but it turned out really well. And they kind of kept me on board since then. But yeah, I was listening to some of your other episodes, and it is funny that it's like everyone seems to have that same story of like, oh, I knew this band, I got to experiment with them, and that kind of like started my journey working in this field, like kind of like repeatedly, I guess.
Because like having Perennial as your first like music video for these guys, I think it's really, really sick, because that video has, just from a cinematography perspective, it's a high level. But you've also done a lot of great things like for a music video, because it's like a music video that's a performance in a pretty simple setting in the forest, and there's not really any narrative storyline, but it's more like iconography or like beautiful. I wrote down some things actually. Maybe I can just see what I wrote here and just tell you a bit about what I felt when I saw it. It was like making the most out of a setting on a budget, right? Having that backyard by using forest, and you use a lot of lighting from the sun, like sundown, sunset, and also at night. You focused on a lot of like really nice close-up angles with a lot of bokeh and those really nice gimbal shots along the bed of the forest. And I feel like watching, because I watched all the music videos today, when I was researching, was okay. You actually started like your signature style with that video that kind of took each step into the next video with along with it. You could kind of like see the way you choose your angles, where you film it, like follow along a track. So that whole thing about going in slow motions, like parallaxes, and having things in the foreground, that's been a thing all the way through. Actually, I felt.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I like to like analyze like what's your, if I was to do like a Dylan, I can't remember the last name again.
Hryciuk.
Yeah. Hryciuk. The Dylan Hryciuk music video, what would I do? And one of the things I would do would definitely be like gimbal shots, like some kind of foreground, some kind of really, really simple, slow parallax around them, but like really focused on that really nice like cinematography, which it looks just really expensive, even though it's like the whole setting is just the forest, right? But you have like these kind of like beauty shots in that video that's really atypical for like a metal vocalist. Usually, like especially female vocalists, they want to be like tough and feel like aggressive and anger. And that video does not have that vibe at all. Like she's just really vibing and just beautiful with the glitter and the makeup, and like that whole way of approaching that kind of concept. Was that your idea? Was that Courtney? Like, how did you collaborate like from the get-go?
Yeah, that's a great question. That kind of was from the beginning working with Spiritbox. They were always like, we don't want to necessarily do the typical metal band thing. Exactly. Even though, yes, there's metal bands that have played in a forest, of course, and we're working with what we have available to us that's free. What I pitched them is like, I want to make a nature-inspired, like very pretty video. Like something that like, we're not trying to be metal in the video. It's like, there's room for it to just be like kind of gorgeous cinematography and like Courtney looking like, I don't know, this almost like fairy tale
exactly
in the project and stuff. And that was very intentional. While in the background, it's hard with Spiritbox because they also like, there's something eerie to their music. So we've always wanted there to be like this haunting, ghostly vibe to it, which is why we like had the haze in the forest, just so it add that like ethereal feel. But yeah, the goal was for sure like, let's just make like the prettiest metal video we could do.
Yeah.
So
you also had that kind of eerie feel when you did like the night shot with the lighting, just doing it like that.
Right.
And then you did Bleach Bath. Was that the next video?
Yes. Bleach Bath is like, I've done 6 videos with them. Bleach Bath, I think, is like the one we don't talk about so much.
Okay, why?
That's the one that kind of got away. So that was our second video, and we lost our location like the day of.
Whoa.
Like we were supposed to shoot it in this like abandoned house that had like these really cool hallways and like really ugly like pink paint. And the guy that had the house available for us, like last minute, I had just flown there, and he was like, yeah, like it's not going to work out this weekend or whatever. And we're like,
No.
oh God, like we just
Yeah.
paid to fly me out. Like we're all kind of broke artists. So it's not like, oh yeah, we'll just fly you again in a week.
Did you do your own DP at that point?
Yeah.
And film like
Yeah,
everything?
Yeah, Perennial and Bleach Bath, I had one actual like crew assistant, but it was just like me, a camera. I think we had 1 or 2 lights on each video. I flew my gimbal down, but it was like very bare bones, almost no crew. And then I would get like the band to be my crew sometimes of like, oh, hold this monitor for me, or in Perennial, they're like holding smoke bombs underneath the shot and stuff like that. Yeah, Bleach Bath was like, holy crap, how are we going to make this work? And then they ended up having this guy who had like this barn that looked kind of eerie, and they're like, okay, everything else in our concept can work, but we have to shoot it all in this one location. And then we emptied this barn out of all this hay, and like we were just like coughing because all the hay dust was like in our lager. Just
my God.
Oh man, this is gonna be rough. It was just like, oh, let's figure it out in the moment. It was the only one that like didn't go as planned.
That's actually because that was actually also one of my questions. Because what I liked about that video is the pacing. Because it's like a great example of pacing in a performance video, where you're like, something's happening in the first verse, a new thing is happening in the second verse, or like you're focusing on something different. So like in the second verse, you're more focusing on those characters and so forth. And then when it comes to like the breakdown part, everything goes to shit with like more dynamics and, you know, shots being blurred and a lot of movements and stuff like that. So like the whole kind of pacing part, how much of that do you pre-plan and how much is like found out in the edit? Kind of depends on the video, or?
Yeah, it's funny because like if you asked other people what they think like my style is, it's like the way over planned like narrative style videos, but those didn't really come until after. So for those videos, I would say it's like capture as much cool different elements and like style, like we did the shaky camera and all that in camera and stuff, and like the projections, and it's like we're just building a bunch of elements, and then in post it's like, okay, let's find like the essence of how it needs to flow together. But I would say after that, the next 4 videos are almost planned like, oh, there's going to be a performance shot here, like where we'd sometimes only shoot performance for those very specific parts. Yeah, Bleach Bath was just like fully experimental, like let's shoot the stuff and cut it together and figure it out.
Yeah. And there's like, as you say, like the great thing about that is that you have some room for experimentation in the edit. But if you want a storyline, what I found out is that when you want to have 3 or 4 minutes to tell a story and also have some performance, it's not a lot of time you have. And I think that is also the reason why you need to like pre-plan a lot of stuff. Like we usually do like, okay, we do a pre-music video almost, where you just cut in like writing on the screen, him doing this here, and then I have 3 seconds to that.
That's
and
then that's exactly what I do. Like I take the song into Premiere. And
exactly.
Like, oh, sorry. Dog's barking.
That's okay. You're green.
Hey. Oh. Quiet. Come here. He really wants to play. Not right now. Yeah. So yeah, what I typically do is I take my ideas into Premiere, and I like build it out as if they're shots and like break it into blocks. Or if I write a script, I turn that script into little images, and then I put them in sequence, and it's like, oh, this is how I'm actually shooting it, and then I schedule from there. Unless they're full performance, then if they're full performance, there's like room for that experimentation in post. But yeah, that's how I approach narrative videos too, because you have to, because once you start realizing it's like, oh crap, I have 5 seconds for like this story beat. So yeah,
the Blessed Bee video is one of my favorite videos that you've done. I really love it. Especially like how the first video you should do, like, it's Courtney and the band in the first video, and then it's a bit more Courtney in the second video, and then like it's only Courtney in Blessed Be, right? I don't think there's any like performance. I feel like, okay, you're just seeing her talent and kind of nurturing that. The whole concept for that video, what I felt was something about, you establish a setting in the forest or wherever that is, in this abandoned kind of house, and you got this 50s, 60s period, and something about a couple, her being ignored, feeling numb in this relationship, feeling chained to it, and you kind of express that with the iconography, with the chain, but you also pace it really well with, everything seems fine at the beginning, and then the eeriness, as you describe it, kind of gets worse and worse to full culmination in the end, where I don't know if it's like her thoughts about, killing him or whatever it is to escape it. But what I really liked was there was a lot of depth into like the subtlety of how you told the story in the beginning, and the way you used lighting, especially with the blue like lighting, and then more natural, it's like orange and teal, or blue and teal. Is that what it's called? Yeah, like cinematic lighting. Did you have a crew here? Because it felt like the whole like production just took a new step, and the whole story was, how much of that was you? How much of that was collab with the band? Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, that one's a while back now, so my memory's a little foggy on everything.
Yeah, you don't have to go way into depth because I have many more questions. Just an idea of it.
We did have a small budget finally. The first two videos were basically no budget videos. Okay. I think it was like, they paid to fly me, and then I think, I don't know, it was like a small little payment for my efforts. On Blessed Be, we had budget that I could like hire a small crew. I was still the DOP. The color scheme was intentional. We wanted it to feel like the world was blue, but then there was like this suffocating orange. And yeah, like teal and orange is a very kind of typical color scheme, but we wanted to use it in a way where it's like, oh no, the orange is like actually kind of a character, but also it's all through like the practicals.
Yeah, I noticed that in the end. Yeah, when you had the guy standing inside in the orange at the end, right? So, and it kind of shifted towards or during the video.
Story-wise, I'm sure we collaborated on it a little bit, but most of what they do is like they might give me a theme or an idea or whatever, but they've been pretty hands off of like, hey, they might be like, we really want to incorporate the color blue. So then it's like, okay, well, this video, I'm going to use blue like in the most excessive way as possible. Like the snow is blue, like the light, like I set my camera to like, I don't know, 2000 Kelvin, like super cold. So everything would wash really blue. It was all like in camera, like that. And then bring in the tungsten with the candles and the lamps and stuff. And we tried to like frame it sometimes. Like there's the one shot where we placed a lamp like surrounding the frame, so she felt like boxed in by the gold. But for the most part, concepts are like typically my ideas, but they'll, especially Courtney, like she definitely ups the ideas with like, and then we can do this or whatever. Like we bounce off of each other really well. But usually like the stories are like, he's gonna have knives in his back, you're going to be slow dancing with him, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, how do we make this work together? But I always pitch them the log lines.
Sick, because it feels like she was really involved in the story as well.
Yeah.
That whole scene where he's being stabbed in the back, there's some guys on the floor like tied with their mouths and feet. Is that the band, or who was those guys?
Those are just extras we hired.
Okay, yeah, because I couldn't really tell if it was the band. We think, maybe that was a fun cameo, but okay.
No, none of that. That was the first video we shot in Saskatoon, where I live.
Okay.
So she and her makeup artist flew down, and the band were not there. And I remember me and Courtney were just like so stoked about the video. And I remember we showed the band for the first time, and they thought it was like too horrific. They were like, "Holy shit!" Like we had to tone down some of the gore in the edits because they were like,
really?
This is this is a lot.
You got to do the director's cut version of that.
Yeah, the director cut would be extra gory. But then it like that was the first video that I did with them where like the reactions went crazy.
Yeah.
They've always been kind of like that band that people react to, but that video, like people were theorizing what it all meant and each
Yeah.
image and like, oh my God, what, like there were a lot of things that we did that we were like, oh, this is all symbolic and metaphorical, but there were definitely things that people were like seeing things that weren't there.
Yeah.
I remember watching a reaction video that someone's like, oh, you can see a face in the shower curtain or like hiding a person and whatever. And I'm like, oh man, I wish we could have the time to like layer it that much, but yeah.
We have a Danish term. I'm from Denmark, and it's going dansklærer, which just means going as a Danish teacher, which is just, really over-analyzing stuff for the sake of over-analyzing stuff. So,
for sure. It's actually, it's kind of funny because our big inspiration was doing, like, making it slow paced like a Stanley Kubrick, like The Shining. Is like the vibe. Like that was another thing where like, we don't want it to have the pace of a metal video. We want this to be like really slow, like long dolly shots. And then there's a whole movie about people over analyzing The Shining. So it's like, oh, that's kind of funny that.
Hey, you nailed that.
That was our inspiration. Yeah.
How did you do those really, really slow parallax shots? Is it gimbal, or do you have a track, or how do you do those? Like when she's in the bathtub and on the bed?
I think the only time we've used a gimbal was on Perennial. On Blessed Be, it was a dolly. Yeah. I have a Essler shuttle dolly, but also a homemade dolly. So depending on the angle of the shot, we use those two.
Sick. Yeah, I really like those. I really, really like those. Because the thing is, when you do a lot of static shots, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm struggling with, is a lot of my shots feel flat because it's shot on a tripod. And I just think the way you just did it really, really subtly, it just made the whole thing more dynamic. And that's definitely one of the things I'm going to take with me. And also the way you kind of frame things with foreground all the time gives it a lot of depth. I think you really did that well in Constance, which was the next video. Am I correct? Yeah. And that is
just number 4.
That's kind of nice because now you're incorporating the band, but you still continue this kind of way of subtle storytelling, even though like the story is a bit more well defined with an old lady that kind of loses everything and loses her memory. How did that come about?
Oh man, Constance is a big one. If people reach out, the video that they know me for is Constance, I would say. It was actually crazy. So the band were working on their debut album, and they sent me an instrumental, and it was just like this really sad, beautiful music that they were working on. No lyrics or anything. And they were like, yeah, what do you think? If you could do anything, what would you do with this song in mind? And my family at the time, this was during COVID, were struggling with, my grandma had dementia.
Okay.
And so she was being, she was in a care home, and her health was deteriorating quite fast. And so I was like, I've always wanted to do a short film about like my family processing the grief of what's going on right now with my grandma. And Courtney had a very similar experience, not with dementia, but her grandma had just passed away during COVID. And there was this like, oh my God, we're kind of feeling the same thing. So she actually wrote the lyrics after, once we picked the video concept, and they both like influenced each other. And yeah, so the whole story is written about my family. Obviously it's like, it's still a story. It's not all like, this is exactly what happened.
Yeah, of course.
But the lady's playing my grandma, the boy's playing me in the video. And there's actually a picture of my grandma when she's holding the picture. That was not on purpose.
That's for dramatic purposes.
Yeah, when she's holding the photo in the video, that's a picture of my grandma when she was younger as a nurse.
That's cool.
Which was it was a weird project because like I had to edit out her face for like the haunting effect in the film, but it was like in my real life my grandma was dying, so it was like looking at her face for 4 hours, removing her face was a very kind of weird experience.
Yeah.
and then once we finished the video, originally I think the song was called Dissident or something else. And they called me up and were like, would you be okay if we name the song after your grandma? My grandma's name is Constance. And yeah, they wanted to do it as like an ode to my family's experience, especially since we were telling that story for their song. So yeah, it was like, it's a crazy experience. And then like the reactions also went wild. There's like articles about like all these metalheads crying to this music video. So it was a very surreal experience, to the point that like the nurses who were caring for my grandma had found the video without us sending it to them. It was just wild.
Wow, because the funny you say that, because I lost my grandfather and my grandmother during the same week this last year. So yeah, that was intense week. But like when I just saw it again here, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna skip through this again, because it kind of hits all those kind of marks, because it's the way you do it is subtle but like really, really effective. And it's kind of one of the things I wrote down was, it's incredible how the pacing is in this video. Like, example, when you do like the I think it's the post chorus, it has like a small bendy breakdown, and then you see like the son being really frustrated in the car. It hits along with that, like those kind of beats where it felt more like the song was a soundtrack to this short movie than the other way around. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why it really, really kind of it went through the screen so well to an audience in like sharing those kind of emotions. Wow. And also I like the way you're describing that collab. That must be like the ultimate way of collaborating with an artist. Like, can't really imagine anything more like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever have a collaboration like that again. Like, you don't hear of bands writing songs influenced by a filmmaker's ideas. And like, it wasn't solely that. We were both influenced by each other and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was just like those things you get to do once. Like, I've had other people be like, we want you to direct a Constance for us. And I'm like, oh, like I only have one grandma. Like,
yeah. It's kind of a finite resource. Yeah.
Yeah. I could do other sad videos, but it's the reason why that connected was just so many special circumstances. So yeah, it was very special for me and Courtney. And it was actually, she ended up wearing this sweater with butterflies on it, and it was kind of unintentional. She picked that as like, she just wanted this like older lady sweater to wear, and something stripped back from being like, oh, I'm a rock star or whatever.
Yeah.
And later, my wife, she's an occupational therapist, and she knows a lot about these fields. But she told me that the butterfly is a symbol that they put on in for people that are being cared for dementia. So there just kept being like these weird coincidences afterwards of like, yeah.
How amazing is that?
Yeah, it was very cool. But yeah, it's a very important video for me.
Yeah, and it's like, I can tell, and just from, you know, what you went through with your grandmother, but also just as reflection point for the band's career. Did it have the same? Did you guys' career like had the same like kind of jump off points? Did you like also feel that your career evolved after that video? Because I feel like Spiritbox really took off after that.
Yeah, like obviously not. I'll never be Spiritbox big as a filmmaker or anything. But I think that was when I saw the most significant change of like, oh, I've had some bigger bands reach out. It doesn't always work out because I live in a very like not the place to live as a filmmaker. There's no bands where I'm at. There's like not a huge film scene here. But that is when it started of like, oh, now other bands that I've heard of, like I've worked with Census Fail, that kind of stemmed from doing that video, or Brand of Sacrifice. They're big fans of the work I've done with Spiritbox, so that's all kind of started to pick up. But I still feel like I'm at like I'm at stage 2 of my career right now.
Sick. That's a great place to be. I actually have a lot more questions, but we're kind of running out of time. So I think I'm gonna skip Hurt You, if that's okay, because I really want to talk about. Sorry, I know you won an award. It's a great video. Let's go to Ultraviolet, because you commented actually on my reaction video, because someone tried to bet you how it was filmed, and you kind of wanted to take that bet. And I'm really, really curious. So this also blew my mind, this video, just because I was like, how did they do it? Because there's thing in reverse, then going into normal fast forward, then there's like some things that's in slow motion and something that's not, and there's dancers and like glitter and everything. And I'm like, how did you do this? So can you give me all your secrets?
Of course. Yeah, so this is an idea I've had in the just on my computer for like years of like, oh, I want to do something that like manipulates time in this way in a single one take video. It wasn't shot at 120 frames per second. That's why I was like, oh, I'll take that back. It wasn't. It was all shot in 60 frames.
Okay.
But the video was pre-engineered. We did all these tests of like, okay, if we record at 60, but we speed up the song here, and then we speed like everything we were hearing on set was the opposite of what you're seeing. So
Yes,
when
it wasn't a one take?
It was one take.
Okay, sick.
It's one single take. There's one edit, which is just to get us back to the loop of the beginning. But everything we were hearing was like when she's going really fast, the song got really slow. When she started going slow-mo, the song picked up really fast, and then sometimes she's regular. It's kind of the speed we had like markers that would tell her when the speed was changing. It was all just one seamless.
Like for the sound, like having a markers like 3, 2, 1, and then change the pace.
And now slow. Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
And then we did it all by BPM. So then she still had that like the click track to follow, but it was really trippy. And sometimes we'd have to tell like the crew like, just because the song's slowing down, we don't want the steady cam to slow down. Like we want it to keep going. Or like the dancers, there's one part in the song where we slowed it down, like I think it was 25% speed. I can't remember. Because I wanted them to like race around her, and I was like, no, you're running around. It's just, you're going to do laps during this. I think it's like a 5-second part of the song that we stretched out into like, I don't know, 40 seconds on set. So yeah, it was a mind fuck for kind of everyone working on it. And then the end shot is how we started the shot with the whip pan.
Oh, so you shot it in reverse?
No. There's no reverse. We did never to like act weird for.
Okay. So you got me.
No reverse.
You got me.
That would kill us.
Yeah, I was, because that was my mind. That was my total mind fuck. Because how could you? Yeah, that didn't make sense. Okay, so you started with that pan, and then you had
with the whip pan, and then end with the whip pan, and then fuse those together. But if you actually like put the video on a timeline, it's a seamless loop. Like
that's
the video ends is the exact frame it begins, so you can just rewatch it as a single loop, because that was like the theme of the album, was that like she's stuck in a loop. But yeah, it was hard. Like I had a laptop with me the whole time, because I was like, we had reverse engineered it, and then in post I had to reverse engineer that. So it was kind of hard to keep being like, oh shit, is this the right beat that you're supposed to do this and whatever. So
did you do any proof of concept before?
Yeah, me and my employee recorded test like the song changes to like test like, oh, when it goes from this beat to slow-mo, like what does that impact feel like? And then from those tests it could be like, oh, where do we want that? Like where can you hear that something changes, so that impact isn't just happening visually but also in the sound. So when it first goes to slow-mo, it kind of feels like, whoa, like some people I don't think notice that the frame rate changes, but it's like, to me, the way the music sounds is like, oh, now you're like, I don't know, the whole world slowed down. So.
Yeah, because also some of the instrumentation goes away, and it's just like some ethereal sounds like that. And that's kind of one of the things that you do really well, is that kind of, matching the dynamics of the visuals with the dynamics of the song, and with your background in music. Like that's another way of telling that you have a background in music, because you can you edit as a musician would, or you notice the thing a musician would notice in the dynamics. And I can really tell when I see like people that do more like, especially here where I come from, commercial stuff, do like music videos that don't have a background music, because like they edit on stuff I wouldn't edit on at all. Like like
Right.
not
Yeah.
like in a weird part of the beat or something like that, right? Or like showing something completely different that like actually listening to the music, like a bass during a solo or whatever. Yeah. So I'm running out of time, but my mind is blown. So many, I gotta process this and watch it all over again. So many great secrets you revealed to me and behind the scenes stuff. I'm so happy you took the time. Then thank you so much.
Of course.
I love your work. And just a final question: can you tell me a bit about what you're working on now, or what's coming on in the near future for you? What's your plan?
Sure. Yeah. So just as a filmmaker, like my hope is eventually to make movies. So right now we're just finishing a 20-minute short film, which is about the like mid 2000s emo metalcore scene that I grew up in. So it's about like kids of that scene just like messing around, and like it all starts with like a mid 2000s concert local show and stuff. So that's what I'm working on, and we're trying to pitch it as a feature, but that's easier said than done. And then I have a big horror trilogy with the deathcore band coming out in the near future, but I can't say what band it is.
Of course, yeah.
Not that it's anything. It's like it's not that like it's not like it's not like Suicide Silence or anything crazy, but it's a band that has been on hiatus for a long time, so it's like their comeback, which is cool.
Oh, okay. You heard it here first, guys. I'm gonna come back. Yeah. I'm gonna come back and comment on the video once it gets released. Yeah, sick. Thank you so much, and I'm so stoked for your work, and thank you so much for taking the time with me here.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, man. Really appreciate it.